Mabuhay, Kamusika, welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. I want to talk about deal breakers today. Deal breakers when seeking a Filipina. What is a deal breaker for one man when seeking a Filipina to marry isn't always one for someone else. In this video, I will list some things that might be a deal breaker for some men, and I will mention what were deal breakers for me. Please subscribe to Love Beyond the Sea for help with pursuing and marrying, having a good marriage with a Filipina. Be sure to comment on what was a deal breaker for you when you were looking. My website is lvbts.com. I say go where you're wanted. There's little reason to be moping around alone. Some would consider it a deal breaker if the Filipina wouldn't want to immigrate to their country. Many Filipinas actually don't want to leave the Philippines. Many foreign men are not ready to just pack up and leave everything behind and head for the Philippines. I would want to find this out sooner rather than later. When I was looking for a wife on Christian Filipina, if the profile said she would not relocate, then I would not try to talk her out of it. If that part had to be left blank, then I would just not consider that person if they didn't tell me what their thoughts were about it. Many aren't interested in relocating and shouldn't be pressed into doing it, but many, probably most are, but you never know. When you've located a Filipina that you are serious about, it doesn't hurt to ask her if she immigrates to be with you, if she will be thinking about retiring with you in her country later on down the line. I think many Filipinos prefer to stay in the Philippines, but will marry and live overseas as a necessity to provide for their family in the Philippines. If given their choice, they would also prefer her and her husband to retire in the Philippines if he would want to do that. And now, if I met a Filipina that I wanted to marry and she told me that one day she hoped we would retire in the Philippines and I was dead set against it or just couldn't do it, I would be honest and tell her I wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be fair to her to lead her on. Before I move on from the aspect of location, if the foreigner is willing at some point to relocate to the Philippines, then they would need to agree on where. City, province. That could end up being a deal breaker if they can't agree on where to live. For me, I want to be not far from a hospital. That would be a good thing, a good hospital too. It is possible another deal breaker for the foreigner could be how far away from her family he wants to live and she wants to live. I've spoken a lot about this in my videos. I think it is wise, in my opinion, to live close by her family. How close? Close enough that they can see their Filipina family member without hardship, and your wife would be able to go travel and see her family. In fact, I'm living proof of that. We will be, right near most of her closest family with the house that we've built over there for later on, retirement. A lot of men would consider a Filipina who wanted to have a baby as a deal breaker. Now, this is often in dating profiles, so they both can know right away how they feel about that. I think there should be honesty here too. If you won't marry a Filipina who wants children, then she should be told this as soon as it comes up. In our situation, we got married pretty quick and didn't put much thought into it. At least I didn't. I decided after we were married, yes, I will try to give her a baby, and we have struggled with that. After about 5 years and 8 months now of marriage, it has become more of an obsession for me as we continue to try for that. Not a possible deal breaker anymore. We're full speed ahead. Just haven't had any progress. I want to give my wife a baby. We want to produce a baby. But we should have talked about this earlier. I have a video, I don't know if I've published it yet, about things we neglected to talk about. You might wonder, you got married so fast, you probably missed some things. Well, we did. There are some things we could have talked about, but too late now, but you can see about those in upcoming videos. Now, the Filipina might already have a child or two. To some guys, this is not an issue at all. To other men, it's a deal breaker. It was a deal breaker for me. I wanted to focus on having a relationship with a Filipina alone, as it had been a very long time without a relationship. So I was looking for only Filipinas that did not have children. Religion, I think, will be a deal breaker in many cases. I did find what I was looking for in this area. There's a way to filter that in Christian Filipina, and then beyond that, it just comes down to talking about it. Will your Filipino wife want to work in her new country after getting her visa, like my wife coming here to America? I wouldn't assume either way without asking her, talking to her about it. I knew my wife wanted to work. We had some discussion about whether or not she would work if we did have a child, which we haven't yet. But we already know what we will do if we do. If the foreign man is simply against his Filipina working, then he needs to tell her sooner rather than later. It's also possible the Filipina will not want to have a job in her new country. If so, the man will need to consider that. Think about it. Decide if it's on your deal breaker list. A deal breaker on the Filipina side would be if she married someone who had too many financial obligations to provide what she needs for security, or wasn't able to provide for her. The standards established to show ability to provide for a Filipina are too low, in my opinion, when it comes to immigration. It's just surprisingly low. Another one not talked about much is if your family was absolutely opposed to it, marrying this woman from the Philippines. At least one that I would consider, the family dynamic. It is possible with time and getting to know the Filipina better, your family would see her as a suitable wife, possibly. If bringing her into a family where she will be openly rejected is a possibility, then how is that good for the Filipina? To be clear, I think the wife is more important than her husband's family. And I tell Isa that she is a priority over anyone in our family here in America. And I've told my mother that straight out. But that doesn't mean that I would marry her knowing the animosity or rejection that she could endure when she got here, if somebody was opposed to me marrying her. Something else that could be a deal breaker for some men marrying a woman from the Philippines is if she is dead set against not obtaining citizenship in your country. Some men might think her getting citizenship is a sign she will leave him. But other men will feel slighted and offended when their advice to get citizenship is ignored or disagreed with because of the many benefits that we think that has for our wife. You might want to discuss this ahead of time because it can be a very agonizing decision for a Filipina to surrender their dear Philippines citizenship. And I can understand that. Now, while she is able to get it back and be a dual citizen, the part about relinquishing it initially may be something intolerable to her. Those are the deal breakers I could think of, and you might be able to think of some more. When I looked for a Filipina wife, I don't think I had a long list of must-haves or deal breakers. I didn't want to make it impossible to find a wife. Try to discover any deal breakers before being committed to each other, and don't marry someone thinking that you can smooth things out later. Know what you need when looking for love beyond the sea.